What is going on, everybody out there? Getting together here in the Warzone Sports Network to talk NFL, to talk Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, and really just an excuse to talk about the NFL because we are jacked that football is back. And also, too, because there's like such a long list of deserved people being inducted into the Hall of Fame. We put together some like little short clips and highlights throughout the show, but we would also like to hear from you on who you think maybe should have got in, shouldn't have got in, maybe not a first ballot, whatever it is. Chime in, let us know what you are thinking. I am joined by Joe Morley and Jay Fly23 on the socials here to talk about the NFL and Hall of Fame inductions. Who we starting with, Joe?
Let's see. We might as well start with like the best one, right? Or the people consider the best one. Start with Mr. Megatron himself.
I find it interesting that you say he's the best one. I thought you were definitely going with Peyton Manning when you went that direction. Is that what you thought, Jay?
I actually was thinking Calvin Johnson. I was actually thinking, yeah, but Peyton Manning is a better player overall for sure. But Calvin Johnson's just that exciting, like he's just a one-of-a-kind type wide receiver in my opinion. And I think, he's one of three, you could probably say. So.
I definitely think one of a kind. Like there was a little bit of a chat that broke out with us privately, and I'm looking at it and I'm like it's hard to know what the parameters are when you're discussing where you're putting him in the conversation because he doesn't have all the accolades that a Jerry Rice has. No. He didn't play in a Super Bowl like Randy Moss. But we're talking about like or even I see Sam Old Sportscast here just threw out Terrell Owens. It's like he might not have all that stuff. But I just don't think that there was another person that I would have picked over him at wide receiver. Fast. His route running was really crisp. He could go up and get any football you wanted. Like, he was just a beat. He was a transformer. That's exactly what he was.
The only knock that people can bring about against Calvin Johnson is he didn't go over 10 years. He only had 9 years in the league. Yeah, but 9 years in Detroit is like a life sentence, right? Get me out of here. It's like, hey, 6-time Pro Bowler in Detroit. I could go over his stats. 731 receptions, 11,619 yards, 83 touchdowns, Tony.
Well,
go ahead, Jay.
Well, I'll give the comparable I'll give to Calvin Johnson is kind of like Kevin Durant if he never left the Thunder. Like he's going to be a little underrated, but think about if Calvin Johnson left to the Patriots or left to a team that had, an elite quarterback and a good system. He wins 2-3 Super Bowls probably, and he probably plays for 13 years, in my opinion.
I'm going to stay in the NFL, and I'm going to go this route, who I think will be a Hall of Famer the moment he hangs it up, and that's Larry Fitzgerald, right? Because Larry has not been as productive lately, right? Like we don't see the same Larry Fitzgerald that we saw in the Super Bowl. He's still good. There still could have been a form of that in Calvin Johnson if the Lions franchise wasn't such a pile of steaming dog flop. Like it's the only they made Barry Sanders retire. And then they got Calvin Johnson to retire, and they were on the cusp of forcing Matt Stafford into early retirement. Like, thank the Lions organization for finally realizing, hey, let's not ruin all these like super special talents careers. Let's get Matt Stafford shipped out of here. So I'm happy about that. But Calvin Johnson, easily one of the best receivers of all time. I think
I'm top three with Randy Moss and Jerry Rice. I think you guys brought both of them up. But I think that's always the three guys that always come up when we talk about the best wide receivers that are retired.
Yeah,
and Terrell Owens, but yeah.
I'm right there. I have a special spot in my heart for guys like Chris Carter, who I think are kind of overlooked. And I also like Andre Reed, played in Buffalo, played with Thurman Thomas. And then my personal favorite wide receiver, if he doesn't get injured and he gets to play with Brett Favre, young people, go look up Sterling Sharp at wide receiver. This man was He was like Calvin Johnson. He was big, he was fast, and he would have played with a gunsling. Favre never saw a receiver that was covered, ever. Like, there was never – if there was a small little fifth pocket on your jeans, like that small, Favre would try to fit it in there. Like, it didn't matter. And so he would have dominated with Sharp for at least a 5-year stretch. He was already winning MVPs with Robert Brooks and Jeff Query and all these other guys that people have forgotten about. So Antonio Freeman, Mark Chimura. I could go on. You can't tell I'm an old Packers fan, I bet.
See, Tony, and if people want to argue, they'll be like, well, Calvin didn't have enough yards. He didn't have enough yards. He's 32nd all-time in yards. But if you watched him play and you watch, like, they triple teamed him most of the time. Like, who does that? Who triple teams one guy on a team and he's still coming down with the ball?
I agree. This is it's not like the most famous play of his career, but one of my favorites is, do you remember when we went through that whole, like, what's a catch, what's not a catch bullshit with the NFL? And he catches that ball. It's the game winner against the Chicago Bears. And of course, in Detroit Lions fashion, he's getting up off the ground and he pushes up. And then the ball slips out of his hand, and the ref is like, no catch. It's like, bro, he caught it. He came down 2 feet in bounds. He landed. He laid there. He held it. He cradled it. He sung it a nursery rhyme. And then he used it to get off the ground. And you're telling me that this guy that he didn't make the catch? But, of course, it's the Lions. So it was ruled no catch. I think it was like week 1 of the 2013 season or something. Like, just off the top of my head. I can't quite remember. But that – do you have a moment, Jay, of like a Megatron, anything that he like maybe went up and just snatched one over somebody?
I think I seen a highlight of him snatching it up over on a double team, but I was actually thinking about the catch no catch rule because I always think about him and Dez when I think about that rule in general, the Green Bay Packers game and the game that you were talking about. But other than that, just really when I think of Calvin Johnson, I just think of just highlights of him just mossing people. Like really, I think mossing somebody's one-on-one. I think Calvin Johnson somebody's Megatron somebody's when you're doing a double team. So he'll just snatch over somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like someone to be covered and clearly he'll be able to jump up. He's so big and grab it. And that's kind of when I think of Calvin Johnson. That's all I think about is that he just has the height and the size to be uncoverable, and that's what makes him a top 3 wide receiver in my opinion. But no specific moment against a specific team, but it's highlights. It's a highlight reel.
Joe, you got anything?
Not anything that comes off the top of my head besides, like I said, the always seeing him triple coverage and Matthew Stafford always just tossing it up. I'm trying to recall one favorite play of his, but no, because every time he stepped on the field, it was always great to watch.
Yeah, and before we transition over here to the aforementioned Peyton Manning, I just would like to say it is kind of weird when we call it mossing somebody, but it's like Calvin Johnson, the things that he could do, there wasn't one thing that his signature. He just did everything better than everybody else. Yeah. So there's not that many people that could do that. Like maybe we could get into a Julio Jones conversation, and I would be fine with that. That's why I think it's funny when young people skip over Julio and just go right to DK Metcalf in conversations, because Julio's doing a lot of that nasty stuff too, can run the routes and he's fast. But let's hit the people with that Peyton Manning video.
We going Peyton Manning.
Wow, the sheriff right there, dropping dimes. Like sometimes I think about, I'm always like, he didn't have great arm strength, and then I'll be like, oh, I'm just remembering him at the end of his career after the neck injury. Then you watch Young, and you're like, wasn't that great? How did this guy dominate the NFL? He was just smarter than everybody else.
Yeah, and okay, when he was on the Colts, it was okay. But when he came over to the Broncos, that's when the hatred for Peyton Manning came out for me. And I'm like, man, and how bad? I mean, do you think the Colts, they got Andrew Luck after that, but do you think they regretted kind of letting him go after that neck injury?
Well, yeah, Jay, you take that first.
I think definitely when you see a team go to two Super Bowls and win one, I think there's a little regret for sure. And then they had Andrew Luck, and they thought, okay, what's going to be okay? We have a guy that's going to build and become that next top guy, and then he retires early, and And now you can see what's going on with them now. I think there's definitely a little bit of regret for the Colts. They, having Peyton Manning, in their grasp, and then they let him go, and you see what he does afterwards. I think he's a top 2 quarterback right behind Tom Brady right now. And the only guy that looks like he can pass him up really is Patrick Mahomes. So, my opinion.
Yeah, I'm good with that breakdown. I think initially there was no regret, right? Because they didn't know what they're sending away a guy in a game that's this violent. He has a freaking neck injury. Like it's not just there. Like, I don't want a chef with no fingers. Like, you need a quarterback who has a solid neck. And so they sent him away. You're getting Andrew Luck. He was the highest rated prospect since John Elway. And then you start to see the Super Bowl success. You see them going and winning and all that stuff. Then all of a sudden he retires. You still have Andrew Luck. So you're like, hey, we're winning. We got a guy who's going to be MVP. Then Andrew Luck's just like, you know what? I'm too beat up. I'm smart. I want to enjoy my family. I'm done. So now when you look back on it, Colts probably kind of lost out because they still had a good roster that could win if they were a little more patient. So I would go that route. I'm going to start off the Manning memory sharing segment here. And I just want to say this, that Peyton Manning, the greatest thing and the respect that I can have for him was when Bill Belichick, it was like a Sunday night football game, went for it on 4th down in his own territory because he didn't want to give the ball back to Peyton Manning. And they didn't get it. I believe it was a quick little screen pass to Kevin Falk, and he just gets smoked behind the line of scrimmage. And it's just like, he's just like, I'm not going to give this ball back to him. Like the Colts are literally going to have to take this from my cold, dead fingers, Belichick said. And they did. And I believe the Colts ended up winning on like a Mike Vanderjagt field goal or whatever. But it was one of those moments where I was like, what is he doing? And I had money on the game, of course. I was pissed. And I was just like, get
That's why you remember so clearly.
I do. I really do. I woke up somebody in my house screaming at the TV. I'm like, what the fuck?
I want to give a quick shout out to this joke right here. I thought this was pretty funny. Got me laughing. We went from talking about Megatron to Mega Forehead.
Cheers.
I don't know if you guys caught that, but I'll go on with my next memory. 7 TDs, 1 game, Tony. 7 TDs, 1 game. I remember that because of all the fantasy football. I think I want to say I was playing him that week. I
think it was week 1.
Yeah, it was
right?
week 1. Oh, yeah. It was week 1. And they said like what, 70% or no, I would not even say that. I want to say it's a little bit higher than that. That won their leagues that year because of Peyton Manning or something like that. It was
they
won that week 1, or they won their week 1 matchup at least. But yeah, Peyton Manning went off that game. I remember that one.
Definitely. Jay?
I have 2 great memories. One you're gonna have to help me out with because I want to show love to Peyton Manning, one of the greatest of all time. I believe it was something like one of the biggest comebacks in NFL history with the Colts. You guys have to help me with that one a little bit. But I remember someone Peyton Manning, some mega comeback. This was a while ago. This is probably 2011, 10. It might have been the Super Bowl season. But I want to show some love. I know he had one of the biggest comebacks of all time. But the biggest thing I remember of Peyton Manning being, primarily a Seahawks fan was that Super Bowl, because that was probably, although he had a great game, it was probably my favorite Peyton Manning moment. And like Joe was kind of talking about, I had no hatred for Peyton Manning, but I did love that game because at halftime it felt like it was a Seahawks celebration, and Peyton Manning, being able to beat the second greatest and then losing to the greatest the next year was always great. But other than that, all I remember about Peyton Manning each game, because I watched a lot of Peyton Manning, week in and week out, was just how he was able to just kind of make it happen, especially late in the game. Like he was one of the quarterbacks. I probably put him, top 3 of quarterbacks that just never gave up and that always had a plan to win a game regardless of what was happening.
Yeah, I can't recall the comeback. He had what, 39, 40 of those in his NFL career. I don't remember which sort of monster comeback you're talking about. And I will say that I really thought that Peyton Manning was going to get the best of the Seahawks in that Super Bowl. Like I liked the opportunity for him to go in and say like, yeah, you guys are young, hungry defense, Legion of Boom. It's all hype. I'm one of the smartest quarterbacks of all time. And it wasn't. Like, in that Super Bowl, you saw those defensive backs come to play. Their coverage, I think it was the opening snap went over his head or whatever in that Super Bowl. It was a mess from Jump Street. Peyton Manning, another thing, what I love about Peyton off the field, how good he is on TV, commercials, hosting SNL. Like we always considered Tom to be a little more buttoned up and boring, and Peyton to be the shucks Southerner, like having fun and whatever. He's not disappointed. The commercials are funny. He does whatever shows. This guy will not stop having success. Like it would take like a huge scandal to bring down Peyton Manning in the eyes of many. So
the Saturday Night Live skit where he's yelling at the kids, telling that one kid to go sit down. Those are great. Tony, do you know who that 7 touchdown game was against? Do you know who he threw 7 touchdowns against?
It was opening night, so maybe like the Steelers?
Close.
Ravens? Okay. I remember it being against a good team that he did it against.
Remember his wide receivers that day?
That would have been Emmanuel Sanders was still on that team. Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas.
Demaryius Thomas caught 2 that day. Julius Thomas caught 2. Andre Caldwell caught 1.
Welker?
Dang, Tony, you're on one.
He's on it.
I'm old, and this is not really good for anything else other than remembering shit. Can't run, jump, do anything useful.
Well, I want to talk about you talking about the Super Bowl. I think it's a big like tip of the hat to Peyton Manning, because you said, like, I remember his face when the ball went over his head the first, like, play of the game, and then Percy Harvin, returned it back for a touchdown on a kickoff return in the second half, and all these things that were happening, and we were celebrating, we were having a good time. But the one thing that's crazy is Peyton Manning is probably one of 3 quarterbacks that I've ever watched that I was still worried that they're going to come back when they were down by, like, however much they were down by in the third quarter. I still wasn't completely comfortable, because Peyton Manning can make these big type comebacks. And that's just like a tip of the hat to him, because most quarterbacks, you look at Super Bowl quarterbacks for the past 10 years, and you take out Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning, and you're not worried about anyone else coming back at all.
Yeah, I'm not. I was gonna give some more love to Favre, but I won't.
It's just crazy that he missed a whole season. Had his neck fused up or whatever the hell they had to do, and still came out and played, and then won a Super Bowl after that. Like, that to me is like unbelievable. Who does that, Tony? Who, like, once you have a neck injury, aren't you like, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna retire. We'll walk away from the game. He was 35 years old when that happened?
Oh, yeah, and we're talking about, doctors are saying one wrong hit, and we're talking paralysis. It's like, bro, you've already won a Super Bowl. You're already going to the Hall of Fame. Your life is already set up. What are you doing out here? Oh, I'm going to go to a couple more Super Bowls. I'm going to throw for 55 touchdown passes. I'm going to give Julius Thomas a career because that's what I can do, right? Lumpia in the house. Get it. What's up, Flojo? Yeah, for Peyton Manning, to me, I wouldn't have done it. But cheers to him. He made it out safely and all that good stuff. Let's go to your guy, Joe. You ready? You want to cue up your guy?
See how to sneak that one in there? See who he pick up that fumble recovery against?
If you didn't have a Raider highlight in there, I would have been upset for you, right? Like, that would have been a drop ball on your behalf. University of Michigan guy, fan here, love Charles Woodson. So happy for him. He went to the wrong Packers team. He went and helped Aaron Rodgers win a Super Bowl, which I don't like that at all. But Charles Woodson, one of the best, one of the of my favorite players, and he was at one point one of those guys you stayed away from. That Deion Sanders treatment. You look to the other side of the field. You don't want the ball to end up in the midst of Charles Woodson. But yeah, one of you two go ahead, show some love for Charles Woodson.
Go ahead, Joe. It's your guy.
Yeah, that's my guy. And I did a post earlier today talking about how when I was a young kid, I didn't have a lot of people. Name another DB to win the Heisman, Tony. Go ahead. You're old.
Okay, I'll think about it. I don't.
But yeah, not I grew up in a household that nobody watched sports but myself, right? So I remember waking up. I went in there, turned on it. I go, hey, there's something called the NFL Draft this weekend. I turned it on, sat there on the little chair waiting for the Raiders to draft. They drafted Charles Woodson. After that, the memories of, and you guys see it all the time. Every time they show Charles Woodson with the rose in his mouth, all that stuff from the Michigan Rose Bowl. And then when he went to the Raiders, he performed very, very well for a couple years. But then I do remember the downside of Woodson in Oakland. It wasn't pretty. He was sitting out games. They were questioning if he lost it or if he even loved the game anymore. So it was time for them to mutually part ways. When he went to Green Bay, it stung. It stung. But I think I showed this during the Hall of Fame game, right? But I'll show it again. This is right off my wall, Tony. Right off my wall right here next to my desk. Charles Woodson rookie card right here. Well, it's Charles Woodson's on top, Tim Brown's on the bottom. So you got two of the badass guys from the Raiders right there, both Hall of Famers. But I mean, now Tony's going to come in and smash it and say, he made his bones in Green Bay. No doubt about it. 36 of his interceptions were in Green Bay. It's 36 of the 65. I'll give you that, Tony. He revived his career, and he went over there. He won his only Super Bowl in Green Bay. He went to 2. He lost 1 with the Raiders. But when he came back for the last couple of years and played safety for the Raiders, that's where you knew that he grew up and he loved the Raiders. And on Christmas night, it was Christmas Eve in the Coliseum where he's holding up the O and he's yelling Raiders. Like, it was just an amazing thing to see. But Charles Woodson, well deserved. I'm glad I could see it. So, but damn, it makes me feel old, Tony.
It should make you feel old. Remembering people's draft days like that. Flojo showing a lot of love to Woodson in here. He was absolutely incredible. I think he ended up getting hurt in that Super Bowl and was like still wanting to go out there. I think he ended up like separating his shoulder or whatever for the second half of that game against the Steelers. Tough guy. And also this smart business decision to head back to Oakland to finish out his career, right? Like, great branding opportunity to play with the Packers and the Raiders. Like, very smart. Probably could have went somewhere else, chased another ring, but why not go home and finish, the legacy in Oakland for whatever it is and have that fan base that just loves you, and guys like Joe, you've only experienced misery. The Tuck rule, yes. The Super Bowl blowout, 10 years of just garbage football team, Derek Carr, Baker. Tell me when you want me to stop, Joe. It's just an endless pit of misery for the Raiders. Let's cut this out, social media team. Here we go.
Well, that actually brings me to my why I love Charles Woodson so much. And without Charles Woodson, my favorite player might not even exist. Because there might not be any Tom Brady without Charles Woodson. If they don't call that an incomplete pass, where Charles Woodson was the guy who picked that ball up, right? If I'm not mistaken, he's the guy who made that hit, I believe, actually on Tom Brady.
Yeah, he didn't get the ball. Beaker got the ball, but Woodson made the hit.
Made the hit, right? Yeah. So Woodson, he forced the incomplete pass, which could have been a fumble. Which and Raiders fans, I know they say should have been a fumble, and I think 99% of the road probably agrees with that. Outside of Tom Brady fans, but. Without that play, I think that play just really elevated Tom Brady to the next level. If they actually do call that a fumble, Tom Brady might not even be, playing on the team. He might not even be the starting quarterback next year. So there's so many things that you think about Charles. I think Charles Woodson once said that he tells Tom Brady that he's got to thank him for his wife, his house, his money, his rings. Because without that,
Yeah, he doesn't leave Bridget Moynihan and end up with Giselle and be a $1 billion couple. The Tony Tuck rule. Yeah, there's probably a little bit of that of me dropping the nachos on Sunday. I didn't do it. I brought it in. You knocked it out. It's not a fumble. I don't really know. I didn't have anywhere to go with that joke, and it fell flat. Wonderful.
It was a fumble, and I'll tell you that right now. It was a fumble.
Yeah, the joke was a fumble. It's a turnover on my linguistic ability. Let's move on to Mr. Alan Faneca and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, I don't anticipate this one being a long one, and this is kind of be overall because I can't really be like, oh, remember that block? Remember when they swang the screen pass outright, and Jerome Bettis was piled up behind him? You wouldn't really be able to tell which one was the offensive lineman in that scenario either because the bus was a full load. But Alan Faneca, he does seem to be like a Pittsburgh Steelers kind of player and the kind of guy that I think that they need to get back to, because the offensive line has not been good and they had, I think, a couple people retire and they lost Villanueva. But like Alan Faneca is like, when I think of Pittsburgh Steeler football, like that kind of a guy. Like even in those highlights there, like if you can make Charlie Batch look good, I don't know if he caught the tail end of Slash and Cordell Stewart or not, but like, good guy, and I always like to see offensive linemen getting some love, getting people reminding, oh yeah, Jerome Bettis was really good because of these guys. Roethlisberger was able to stay upright, or Mike Tomczak or whoever he blocked for was able to stay upright because of these guys.
I was gonna say, did I see Tommy Maddox in one of those highlights?
Tommy Maddox, there it was. I was thinking, I'm like, was it Mike Tomczak? Like, who was? It wasn't Neil O'Donnell. I know Alan Faneca's not that old, but yeah, I couldn't quite remember. But yeah, some of those offensive linemen that we forget about how great they were, how many great running backs were able to, thrive, how much time Roethlisberger might have been able to get in the pocket because of guys like Alan Faneca. I mean, especially when you've been playing in a division with the Ravens, you got to play them twice a year. The Bengals had some pretty nasty defenses in that division for a couple years. I mean,
here's what's impressive, Alan Faneca. He started 201 games, Tony.
Yeah.
Out of 206 total, and the only ones he missed were for his rookie year, like when he was just barely starting up. He was on the field every game, ready to go. And you know how offensive linemen take those poundings. And that's like you said, he's a Pittsburgh Steeler. Pittsburgh Steelers tough, and you got to give him credit when they're not missing games and when they're offensive linemen like that.
Yeah, I agree. Jay, I don't know if you want to talk at all about offensive linemen or.
Yeah,
whatever.
All I got to say is, I always appreciate and, give a round of applause, tip my hat to any offensive lineman in the Hall of Fame, because I feel like they're, one of the most important positions in football and most undervalued, underappreciated. I'll say underappreciated in football. You can't, these running backs that get all the glory, these quarterbacks, they have no time. You see what happened to Joe Burrow last year. They have no time. They're getting hurt. They're getting sacked. They can't make these amazing throws. So, hats off to him. Congratulations on making the Hall of Fame. That's all I'm going to really say, but always nice to see an O-lineman make the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And just real quick, like you always see people like, oh, I do this for free. I love the game so much. I really do believe that about offensive linemen when they say it, because they're just basically saying, hey, we're going to go out and get into 60 to 70 car collisions every single weekend. And then nobody's going to give us any love. They're not walking through the hotel lobby and people are fawning over them. They think that they're just like the janitor or something, like unless they have like giant chains that they're walking around with, off the 2 Chainz collection. But like nobody's fawning over offensive linemen. They really just love football. They love to just put their hand in the dirt and smash somebody. So give it up for the offensive linemen.
There's not a lot of stats that you can go off of offensive linemen, right, that make people look good. But I'll give you one for Alan Faneca. In his whole career, 13-year career, 4 holding penalties. That's it. 4 holding penalties in his whole career. He had 29 total, but 24 of those were false starts. So, I mean, he played in some rough environments, but if you think about it, 4 holding penalties for an offensive lineman his whole career, I'll take that.
Leatherwood's about to get 4 penalties on one play this season, Joe.
Shut your mouth.
All right. Let us. Just in time for Alex to hear me get an Alex Leatherwood shot. Let's go to Drew Pearson. If he is lined up there, where you. Okay. Now, I never saw Drew Pearson play, so I'm not going to be able to pretend like about how good he was when I watched him for the Dallas Cowboys and, Tom Landry and all that stuff. None of that. What I will say about this is this guy was campaigning every single year for the Super Bowl. I would see him on a show complaining with Skip Bayless or on some ESPN show about being disrespected. And I think after 15 years or something, finally he was F it. I don't need the Hall of Fame. I don't want it. This place is a joke. They don't respect whatever. And then they called him and they were hey, Drew, welcome to the Hall of Fame. He's the greatest day of my life. I waited. I knew it would happen. It's wait, what? 6 months ago, you were F this place. So yeah. I think the lesson I take is that if you have hopes, dreams, whatever, just leave it out there. Maybe that door will open itself up. There's no need to badmouth the whatever establishment being disrespected or whatever. Eventually it'll come back around.
Good to know that you're not that old, Tony.
Yes.
I did not see Drew Pearson either. The only thing I remember is the great speech that he gave at the NFL draft in Philadelphia because he was a Cowboy. It went off on the Philly fans, got them all wild up. You remember that one, Tony?
I don't.
Well, I wish I could pull it up because that was awesome. But he had that for him. Other than that, I just have to look at the stats because he played 1973 to 1983. So none of us were around there. Boy.
Well, maybe? I'll tell you, I remember sitting in my living room and I had the Cowboys game on and I seen Drew with this amazing one-handed catch. I'm just playing. I never seen him play either, but I didn't want to be on this segment without saying anything, but congratulations to Drew. I don't know anything about Drew Pearson, honestly, but to make the Hall of Fame, the Tony story was pretty incredible, and I might have to check out that speech when we get off here.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was a 2017 NFL draft. I would play it, but I you know how YouTube is. Sometimes they'll get all mad at us.
Yeah. No, there's no need. People can go and find it if they want. Like Jay said, he's going to go check it out. But yeah, and I think Jay put it nicely. To make it to the Hall of Fame, just tip your hat. Congratulations. Another Cowboy in there. You know Jerry loves that. Get all of his guys in there, even though I don't believe he was the owner when he was there. Do we have any more highlight videos of these? You want to pull? I'm not sure which one's left. Yeah.
Because I don't like this guy either. This guy sucks too. I don't know how he made the Hall of Fame, but I'm going to play it.
I think we know it is.
That first hit right there is a perfect segue into Steve Atwater is also part of this, but him and Steve Atwater got to share a secondary for the Broncos for a minute or two, I believe. Those kind of guys would be playing today for free because those hits right there would cost you $150,000. Like you'd be out of the NFL if you went after people's craniums the way that John Lynch did. Like that first hit, I screamed, "Oh!" Like you don't want to be hit like that. I wouldn't want to be hit. I would retire after getting smoked like that in an NFL game.
Yeah, and it's not the stats. Like you don't look at John Lynch's stats and be like, "Oh, he's a great interceptor. He picked off all these balls." No, when you played John Lynch, he laid you out, and you were afraid to get that ball going up against that defense. John Lynch, and like you said, he played his last couple of years in Denver, and he was still pretty good there. When he had, even with 70% left in the tank, he was still dominating and letting people know. And now he's even a pretty damn good GM.
He is. Jay?
Definitely. Yeah, well, like you guys kind of already touched on, he wasn't the fastest guy. He didn't really have a lot of things that today's safeties maybe had. but that guy could hit super hard. And the thing I always remember about him, now I finally got a story time and maybe even show my age a little bit. But I was a kid in Bakersfield, California, and I had a friend. His name was Sherman. I don't know if he's probably not watching this now, but he was the biggest Raiders fan I probably ever met until I was like past 18, right? He's a big Raiders fan. So I went to his house to watch Super Bowl that year. And all I remember is how bad all his friends and his family just clowned him the entire game because it felt like it couldn't get any worse because of what that defense was doing to the Raiders the entire game. All I remember from that day is just him just waiting for like one good thing to happen. And it was just us just I'm sorry, Joe, I'm bringing bad memories here, like, post-traumatic stress disorder on you. And the next day at school, we took the bus, and it was just people with like Brad Johnson jerseys and Rondé Barber jerseys, and everyone was just like clowning him the entire bus ride. And it was just anyway.
And those were the only Rondé Barber jersey or Brad Johnson jerseys that were ever sold.
Yeah, Brad Johnson.
That defense, John Lynch was a big reason for it.
See, I remember that Super Bowl because I was watching it too, and I get excited and like, yeah, my team's in the Super Bowl, and then I was like, yeah, screw this, I'm done. Turn this off. Turn this game off. I just remember sitting in the other room pouting and stuff as a little kid, like that. Oh my.
I was in San Diego for that Super Bowl, and I remember how terrified we were to take the trolley back up to El Cajon because we went down to the stadium to be outside, and we were trapped on there with a bunch of drunk Raiders fans in shoulder pads and face paint. Oh, they were some terrifying folks. Most of them are probably in prison by now, but it's fine. Wogcast the building. So I just want to run down some of the other names on this list. I think that was the last video, correct?
Yeah, well, last video, but I got one more for you, Tony. I didn't make a video for this one, but I got one more.
All right, let's throw it up.
Mr. Tom Flores. Mr. Tom Flores.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't even know Tom Flores existed until I saw like a Modelo commercial like 18 months ago. And they were like, Tom Flores for the Hall of Fame, huh? And I'm like, is this an SNL parody? Like, is this a real thing? But I went in, I looked at it, and I was like, oh, he did work. He did a good job. Let's acknowledge him. Let's put him in the Hall of Fame. And I'm happy for him. I didn't really no idea who Tom Flores was before that beer commercial. So mission accomplished, Modelo.
Yeah, so you're saying that's the only reason he got in?
No. Finally, beer commercial is doing something good, though, right? Instead of like just showing naked women and stuff.
Not the two Super Bowl wins that he has.
Listen, I'm not saying that he's not deserving. What I'm saying is I didn't know about him. The beer commercial informed me about him, and I'm good with him getting in the Super Bowl after looking at his resume or getting into the Hall of Fame.
I'll tell you, I think the Hall of Fame, along with a lot of things with professional sports, has to do with publicity and marketing. Like Tony said, you have to know who the guy is for him to make it, because there's a lot of great athletes out there that didn't even make the league, because they had no marketing publicity. So Tom Flores, obviously, great coach, won 2 Super Bowls, right? I didn't really know about him either, but the marketing aspect of it, if he gets on a commercial that's being shown to millions of people, now we know who he is. Now we can see who he is, and then that exposure, seeing how great of a person, as great of a coach he was, that's what propels him, I think, to get to the Hall of Fame. In my opinion, that's how I see it. So Modelo, good job. I don't drink alcohol, but good job on y'all. And Tom Flores, I'm gonna let Joe probably talk about why Tom Flores deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, because it seems like me and Tony don't know too much about why he deserves it, but for sure he does it. He's in it for a reason. So go ahead, Joe. Take it away.
Well, I made a post a while back and people went off on me, but he's the first Hispanic minority head coach to win the Super Bowl. He won it twice. He did his thing. What happened? What are we laughing at?
Juan's in here busting me up.
There we go.
Juan, that's good. I like that.
But yeah, so he did his thing. He deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. It's long overdue, like Juan said. Tom Flores. Anytime you have great coaches that set the standard for the next up and coming coaches at long run, you got to put them in the Hall of Fame.
Definitely, and I'll say that too. First minority coach. I didn't know that either, and that's actually something that when we look at the climate nowadays, where we have more diversity in coaching positions, like we got more black coaches, more brown coaches nowadays. Like that's something that really opens the door, because if you think about it, we haven't, that to my knowledge, have really had any Asian coaches. So the first, Asian coach that comes out there and wins the Super Bowl, that's going to be huge for just the Asian people, especially like Asian American people. So the fact that like a brown guy went out there and did it, first Hispanic minority coach, I think that opened doors to Brian Flores now, the Miami Dolphins, and a bunch of other coaches that are out there, Ron Rivera, and so on.
People just hated on it because he's a Raider. You know what I mean?
The Raiders were loved for so many. Like the Raider hate really didn't drum up until like the 80s. And there was like beef with Al Davis and the league and moving teams around and but like they loved the John Madden. Like, they loved that era of the Raiders, the merger, the AFL, NFL merger. Like, all right, I'm getting old. I want to run down this list of other guys that were honored this weekend because they did like sort of they did half of it today and half of it tomorrow or whatever. But like guys that we didn't touch on, Bill Cowher, we talked about the Steelers. Like Bill Cowher to me was one of those guys that was sort of John Gruden before John Gruden, he kind of had that scowl, that intensity, the big personality, then shifts over to TV. And he was also entertaining in that front for a long time. Edrin James, one of the nicest running backs from when in my youth, like watching this guy be able to receive out of the backfield. I believe was in the same draft class as like Ricky Williams, like a lot of great running backs in there. Congratulations to him. Steve Atwater, another one of those guys, Bronco, that would be playing for free today. Like literally would be getting fined almost every time he stepped on the field because he was just laying a hammer on folks. You didn't want to go over the middle. Now, guys, it's not you make a business decision, but you ain't that afraid because guys can't hit, can't target like Steve Atwater did. Isaac Bruce from The Greatest Show on Turf, Torrey Holt should join him at some point. Isaac Bruce was just nasty with it out there. Troy Polamalu, one of my personal favorite players of all time. Let it flow, Troy.
Woo!
Right there. USC, fight on for Brian Bolster if he jumps in here. Absolutely had crazy ability and range and was so smart and always seemed to be making plays, kind of, what they're hoping Minkah Fitzpatrick can be for that defense now. Jimmy Johnson, great coach in college, then went and did it in the NFL, famous, how about them Cowboys time with Jerry Jones. And I think that was it. I think he was the last one on my list that we did not touch on. And there's a couple more. I didn't really know who those people were, so they were not on my list. Any of those players from that list you want to spend a little bit more time shining some light on?
Well, I'm actually surprised. We had a Drew Pearson highlight, but we didn't have an Isaac Bruce or a Troy Polamalu highlight tape because Isaac Bruce I think he was one of the best receivers of his time. I remember just being this is the Rams were in St. Louis. So, I mean, me being from Bakersfield and, LA and all that stuff, it had nothing to do with me liking the Rams at that time. But the Rams were one of my favorite teams. I still remember the Super Bowl against the Titans. I still remember these things that they had. And I just remember Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt might be one of the greatest offenses I've seen, at least growing up, along with the Tom Brady offenses. That offense, they call it the greatest show on turf for a reason. So Isaac Bruce, I think he definitely deserves a Hall of Fame entry, as does Torrey Holt, like you just brought up, and the whole Raiders offense. Orlando Pace as well, talking about love for the O lineman. Isaac Bruce is just a guy that got it done and was a part of one of the best offenses I think we've had since the 2000s, the early 2000s. So, and then Troy Polamalu, of course, I'll just say is one of the best safeties that we've had. And again, kind of bringing that diversity into it. The Samoan safeties now that you see in college who are just taking people's heads off. I think Troy Polamalu. I know one of my close friends coached him at USC. I mean, one of my good friend's dad coached him at USC, and another Samoan guy, bringing a lot of those guys in. Manti Te'o, who's not a safety, but just kind of that what he kind of started getting the ball rolling into, I think was really amazing. So he's a pioneer in his own right.
Manti Te'o's girlfriend was a safety, right?
Oh, I have a story about Manti Te'o's girlfriend actually, because I was like in on that, like in the after, of course, I didn't know until after, but I knew the person who was Manti Te'o's girlfriend, and it's a whole story. I don't know if my friend would want me to talk about that, but I have the whole inside scoop on that, by the way. I know how it went. That was crazy. It was a crazy story, especially when I connected all the dots after everyone found out that he didn't have a real girlfriend.
Well, you go ahead and clear that, make sure that you're good, and then come back and we will get into the Manti Te'o catfish, whatever scenario happened.
All I will say right now is that Manti Te'o was a good guy. He was not in on it at all. He had no idea what was going on. People thought that he was trying to play the world for his Heisman and all. He had no idea what was going on. I felt terrible for the guy. He was a legit catfish victim. Is all I'll say.
Would you take Manti Te'o's girlfriend over Ben DiNucci?
Nope, that's the one. And he was probably good. He was actually a decent football player too. Was the crazy part about it. So, but no, I probably would take Ben DiNucci over.
I think he was still getting reps last time I saw. Wasn't he on the Saints or somebody last year?
Yeah,
back and forth.
I want to address the thing with Juan here where he says Holt over Bruce. I don't know. It's to me, like, it's really close. I just remember Isaac Bruce being the one that I was more afraid of when the Packers played. When the Packers played the Rams, I was always a little bit more afraid of Isaac Bruce getting loose, getting after, and scoring than it was of Torrey. Torrey Holt just seemed like he was gonna eat no matter what. But I was more afraid of what Isaac Bruce was gonna do, or Akeem. Well, Marshall Faulk was the real problem, anyways.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to look at.
Well, I'll put it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I'll put it this way: as a Rams fan, I would say Isaac Bruce was a wide receiver one. He was a better wide receiver, but Torrey Holt's a wide receiver you like more as a fan. So as a guy who likes the Seahawks too, if you remember the Doug Baldwin, Jermaine Kearse Seahawks, Jermaine Kearse is the guy who the Seahawks fans liked. Like, we all liked him the best. But we acknowledge that Doug Baldwin was the better wide receiver. And I think that's the same situation with Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, in my opinion.
I can't even. I almost put you on timeout right there. We can't go from Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt to Jermaine Kearse and Doug Baldwin.
Super Bowl champs. Some respect on their name.
I will put some respect on their never touching the Hall of Fame, either of those guys. As to where Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce are both in the conversation. Joe, you look like you found some stats you want to read off?
We just want to say how close they were. We all knew how close they were, like, in stats wise. Isaac Bruce played 5 more seasons than Torrey Holt. They finished. Let's see. Isaac Bruce finished with 15,280 yards, 208 yards receiving. Torrey Holt had 13,382 with 74 touchdowns compared to Isaac Bruce 91. So I mean, if you kind of look at it, you got to wonder who had the. If he would have had a couple more years, he would have beat him on yardage wise, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying which one I think is better. I'm saying who I feared. Like, when I would watch the games, who I was worried about, and I worried more about Isaac Bruce than I worried about Torrey Holt.
Those are good stats though, because I always thought Bruce was a better wide receiver, but I always liked Torrey Holt a lot. I remember he was my favorite guy, my favorite wide receiver. So, and maybe it makes more sense. Maybe there's a reason why he's a lot of people's favorites and why that guy had him over. Why Cats had him over him.
We're not getting into the Ben DiNucci thing again.
Yeah, I don't want to go down that road. We had fun with it. I do want to go with a nice segue here from Same Old Sports, because I have written down a list for you guys of current to sort of recently retired players as to whether or not they're Hall of Famers. So we can start with Reggie Wayne, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Reggie Wayne is a Hall of Famer. Not first ballot, but he's a Hall of Famer in my book. What do you guys think about that one?
Yes, I have him as a Hall of Famer too. Especially, you're playing with Peyton Manning. Say everything he did with Peyton Manning. You can make the argument that if he didn't have Peyton Manning as his quarterback, maybe he's not a Hall of Famer. But the facts are he did, and the facts are I think he did enough to get in the Hall of Fame. And that's how I see it.
Yeah, I agree.
He led the league in receiving 1 year, right? With Peyton Manning, he has a Super Bowl ring. I mean, it's kind of hard because he's on the opposite end of Marvin Harrison. So it's the same thing with Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt conversation that you're looking like, well, but I think he has to be in. I think he has to be in. He's done enough.
Yeah, okay. That was an easy one. We'll stick with wide receivers because I want to go to one that's still playing now in Arizona, and that's AJ Green. Like there was a point in AJ Green's career where I was like, oh, this guy's going to go to the Hall of Fame. Like he was stacking up some pretty good numbers. And then it was like little banged up injury here. Quarterback play isn't very good. But like, if he has a little sort of life in Arizona, could he compile numbers to make a case for the Hall of Fame? I'm just asking.
Well, this is how I'm gonna go on AJ Green, because finally a guy that I can clearly remember watching a lot of all the time. AJ Green, a recent guy, and I'm gonna tell you something about AJ Green. You know how Tony was talking about, oh, this makes me feel old because I'm talking about this guy from the 90s or whatever. In about 10, 15 years, I'm gonna be in the same position talking about AJ Green, about a guy that nobody really remembers anymore because of what happened to him. It's a tragic story. So I'm going to be talking about, man, AJ Green was catching everything. He was a top 5 wide receiver for years in a row. This guy was amazing. This guy was doing crazy things. And then he just kind of disappeared and he's no longer a guy that you're really afraid of. I think he's going to end up being the wide receiver 4. I mean, he might line up opposite of DeAndre Hopkins as a wideout 2 for a while, but I think production-wise he's going to be behind Moore and he's going to be behind Christian Kirk. And it's just, and maybe hopefully he surprises us and he does, he'll have a few really good games, I think, but in the long run, people are. I think, unfortunately, he's a great guy. I love AJ Green, his personality, who he is as a person, who he was as a wide receiver. But I think in 10, 15 years, he's going to be a guy who's going to be forgotten about, unfortunately.
Let's tell me about the fact that he can juggle. I like that he can juggle. Let's put that on his resume. Go ahead, Joe. You got some stats?
I'm with Jay.
Green?
Well, I have some stats, but they're not Hall of Fame stats. There's no way. He has 9,430 yards receiving in his career, 65 touchdowns. He's 30. He's 30, going into his 33 years old season, and yeah, I'm with Jay. He was a Bengal. He got a lot of those in garbage time. Of course, playing for the Bengals, if you just show up a little bit, you're gonna look good, right? You're gonna look.
How many
good.
Receptions, Joe? What's the total on receptions?
Total receptions 649. So yards per reception was 14.5.
That number is a little light. All I'm saying is, I feel like if he can have those hang-on years with Arizona, he'll put up some nice numbers that will put a case. He wouldn't be in my Hall of Fame, but I just wondered if anybody would make a case for him.
Now, Tony, I'll tell you real quick before I move on. If he played with Peyton Manning or Tom Brady like Reggie Wayne did for so long, I think he does make the Hall of Fame. I think Andy Dalton was quarterback for most of that time. I love Andy Dalton, but. Yeah, sometimes it's just who you play with, and I love Andy Dalton. It's not a knock on him. It's just maybe that could have been what put him over, but he's not there.
See, I like what Juan says here too. You have to be at one point the best wide receiver in the league for at least 1 year, and he was never that.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that break. You guys are going to see that some of the people that I have on my list that I'm like, they're Hall of Famers. You guys are going to be like, no, that's not a Hall of Famer, but I'm fine with that too. So I was going to ask whether or not Julio Jones is first ballot or not, because I think he gets in. For me, I don't have any questions with Julio Jones getting into the Hall of Fame. But do you think he's first ballot? Larry Fitzgerald and Antonio Brown were the other names that I wrote down.
Hey,
I think Julio. Go ahead, Joe.
Did you know that AJ Green has more touchdowns than Julio Jones?
Yes, I did.
Just throwing that out there. So if you're going to go by Julio Jones, if you're going to go by touchdowns alone, but then again, Julio Jones also has 4,000 more yards receiving.
Well, he has I think he has him in yards and receptions. The touchdown numbers have always been very perplexing for Julio Jones. Because then if you look at Matt Ryan, which I'm going to bring him up in a second. But when I look at it, it's why doesn't he have more touchdowns? And I guess it's sort of like a triple team factor. It's like the shut him down. But just the Super Bowl performance that I remember seeing, he should be a Super Bowl champion if the Falcons knew how to manage the clock and the right plays to run at the end of a game that you're up 28-3 and you're in field goal range. Maybe let's not drop back and pass. But yeah, Julio Jones is in. I just wondered if anybody thought that he was first ballot.
Well, I'll go with Same Old Sports just said something that I was going to bring up, is that I think Julio Jones will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think what locks him in there for sure is he's on one of the best teams, I think, in the NFL right now, is on the Tennessee Titans. the Tennessee Titans win the Super Bowl this year, if they could knock off Tom Brady or whoever comes out of the NFC and knock off the Chiefs, of course, Chiefs and Bills in the AFC, I think that locks him in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I think he's really close already, just because. And someone said earlier, there was a few years in a row where Julio Jones was the best receiver in football, and it was kind of hands down. Like some people would bring up Antonio Brown or bring up Michael Thomas and things like that, but I don't think they were ever really threats to who Julio Jones was. So, in my opinion, at the end of the day, when his career is over, he should be a first ballot Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Juan makes another good point. I think Calvin just made it on his first ballot. So, like, Julio to me has been a very similar impact player on a team that just didn't have a ton of playoff success, although they did make the Super Bowl one year. Joe?
Yeah, I would go first ballot on Julio, and I think that's the way it's going. I think people see the name, they remember how he plays, and they're going to put him first ballot automatically anyways. But stats aside, he's changed the game of football. When he stepped on the field and he's on the opposing team, you know that you have to game plan for Julio Jones.
Yes, I agree with that. Antonio Brown, right? To me, Antonio Brown is definitely a Hall of Famer football player. I don't know. I feel like a little bit of the Terrell Owens factor here, where it's like writers or whoever's voting might not put him in because of his off-the-field stuff. Like that, to me, is where it's like, yes, I believe he's a Hall of Famer, and no questions asked in my mind about it. I don't know if he'll get – I don't think he goes in on the first ballot unless he has like a real image makeover while he's with Tom Brady in Tampa.
Yeah, and Antonio Brown and Julio Jones have about the same amount of receptions. Julio Jones has them beat in yardage still, but Antonio Brown is just like a touchdown machine. He was a touchdown machine in Pittsburgh. He always has been. But I'm thinking the same way you think, Tony, is people are going to remember the craziness of Antonio Brown, not what he put on the field. They're going to remember that, and that's going to hold him. That's going to be held against him, and he's not going in first ballot. He'll eventually get in. I guarantee he'll eventually get in, but it's not going to be first ballot. And I'm trying to think of when, because they might hold it against him for 1 or 2 years.
They did it for Owens for 3 years, I believe. Just they didn't like it. Go ahead, Jay.
I'm going to go with Antonio Brown being a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I get where you guys are coming from, but I really think, he just came off the Super Bowl. He's playing a game with Tom Brady this year. He might play. You don't know how long he might play with Tom Brady as that third wide receiver. And if he has a good string of years here, which I think he will, and like you said, an image makeover, you're playing with the most loved guy or hated guy, but definitely the greatest football player of all time in Tom Brady, in my opinion. And you're playing on this team that's winning constantly. I think because his image, he had that video that surfaced outside of his house where he snapped on somebody. I think he wanted to fight somebody or something like that. And it's like, I don't think that those few small moments in that 1 or 2 year stretch is going to really change too much. I know a lot of people, myself included, I sided with Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh. I sided with Antonio Brown with the Mike Mayock situation in Oakland. And I think a lot of people have sympathy for him and for football players dealing with CTE and head injuries, getting hit so much that we're not going to – hopefully they'll see that and not blame everything on Antonio Brown and realize that it's tough. It's tough on a football player, and they have some mental health is very important. He had a few issues with mental health, and now he's gotten over that, thankfully, hopefully. And I think we can get past that and realize that mental health is serious. We shouldn't put all the blame on the person and look at the football player. He was an amazing football player, and he still is. And he still will be, I think, for the next few years, at least for another year or two.
Okay, so just my side of what you were just talking about. He essentially quit on 2 teams, like from the outside looking in. Pittsburgh didn't want whatever, then quits on Joseph's Raiders or what's going on there. And then this offseason, after producing the way that he did, he still couldn't get signed by another team. Like nobody was going to give him money to go somewhere else because they're thinking the good behavior has to do more with Tom Brady than it actually does a behavioral lifestyle change for him. So for me, I still think that there's a little bit of panic until he does it away from Brady. So you're saying the image rebuild, I feel like Brady is getting too much credit for that, at least what I'm perceiving from watching like the media and the stories and everything like that. I think another team needs to take a chance on him where he needs to go and play and establish that he can keep it together.
And I think Juan's 100% correct when he says it's all politics. It is. And it doesn't matter what Hall of Fame it is. But, yeah, no doubt he's on his way. Did you guys know that in 3 seasons, there's 3 different seasons that he averaged 100 over 100 yards receiving per game. Per game. over 100 yards. That's dominant for a wide receiver.
He put up
That's like 3 games. That's like 16 games, 14 games in a season that he was averaging over 100 receiving yards a game.
It's a video game, like video game numbers. This guy's like, if you're playing on like easy mode or rookie mode on a video game, and you just want to target him all day and get crazy numbers, is what he was doing. So, and that just is why. And I get the politics part. He said it down there, but I don't think it's that big of an issue to keep him out of the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. But I get what you're saying, Tony. He did quit on 2 teams. But I just think people will be able – and today, if this was 10 years ago, maybe if this was even 5 years ago, there's a chance that keeps him out. But by the time he's eligible for the Hall of Fame, I think that we're aware of the mental health issues that are going on with NFL players enough to be able to put that aside and just see him as a football player and give him that first ballot Hall of Fame.
I do think – I was just going to say this real quick. I do think that if – he's smart and he has a good PR team or whatever, there will be like a documentary that will come out and it'll be like, inside Antonio Brown's brain or whatever. And there'll be like something that sheds positive light on all the things he was going through. Maybe it's a family related thing. Maybe it is mental illness. Maybe there is some sort of brain damage, but you can spin it to make him look almost like what he overcame, the moment
like a victim.
He was a victim. And that could help the positivity in the community of who's voting to get him into the Hall of Fame. No question. We used to argue in fantasy football, there was a real conversation about whether or not he should be the first pick for a couple of years, like as a wide receiver, because he was putting up 1,800 yards and a dozen touchdowns. Like he was insane at the game of football.
I want to say something. It's maybe, and I want to make it clear so it's not super controversial, because it's not the same thing. Obviously, they're 2 different things completely. But I want to say this because I want to for people that don't maybe understand it as much. But we have a player, or if we had a player that went through something like disease, like something like cancer or something that was terminal, very serious, obviously that we take very seriously as a society. And he came back and he couldn't play football for a few years because of it. And he came back and made a comeback. It would make such an incredible story, such an incredible comeback story at what he did. And mental illness, obviously, I don't want to compare. I don't want to say they're the same thing at all. Of course, definitely, but we got to realize that mental illness is a disease, and it does affect people, a lot. And it obviously affected Antonio Brown a tremendous amount. And if he can overcome this, and it seems like he's overcoming it a little bit, I think, like you said, the documentary should come out, and we should acknowledge that and see that, and see him as someone who overcame mental illness, as opposed to somebody who just was a bad person or did something crazy or something like that. Because it truly is a lot to deal with, especially when you're playing football and you're that level of a talent. And you're dealing with mental illness at the same time. And we've seen it with Simone Biles in the Olympics. We've seen it with and she didn't do anything like Antonio Brown, but you had all these people say, oh, she quit on her team. She quit. And I just think there comes a point where we have to understand mental illness is serious, and people that are overcoming that, we should definitely not hold it against them, but we should definitely give them a round of applause for what they've done. And for him to come back and win a Super Bowl and be somewhat productive, we can say he had some good games in Tampa already, and he'll continue to have some good games in Tampa as well. So that's my maybe controversial opinion on it. But I definitely think that that we should see that as a plus for Antonio Brown, that he's making it past this, that he's actually gotten back on the field.
Joe?
That's all I got to say about that.
Okay. No.
I think it's too deep, but
no. It's perfectly okay. I liked it. I agree with most of it. The Brandon Marshall, one of my favorite wide receivers, has discussed in depth about his challenges with mental health and stuff like that. And he's one guy that if he could have maybe checked in and gotten the right help or medication or whatever it is, his career, he's to me a guy that should have been a Hall of Fame wide receiver. What he was able to do, he caught 20-something balls in a game one time. He was undefendable at one point in his career. He just could never keep it together in between the lines and stay in one organization and really start to dominate. But he was unstoppable at one point. And he's discussed that in depth. I want to move over to the running back position, because I think as time goes on, we're going to start seeing a lot longer stretches between who gets in the Hall of Fame from this position, right? I think Adrian Peterson is a no-brainer. He was the one on my list here that I have as, is he first ballot or not? Frank Gore, and then Le'Veon Bell. I didn't look up Le'Veon Bell's stats, but I think I don't know. I don't know what his numbers are. I just wonder what anybody else thinks about it. I don't think that he gets in the Hall of Fame just off of like my first thought in my head. But he was one of the names that I wrote down on my paper. But I will say this. Frank Gore is in my Hall of Fame. I love longevity. He was good everywhere he went. I don't want to hear any of this like, oh, well, was never the best running back in football. I don't care. Frank Gore is in my Hall of Fame. Not another question about it from me.
So, Tony, Joe's going to give us some stats right now. I know he is. But before he gets into that, I'm going to say yes, and no on these. Yes, Adrian Peterson, first ballot Hall of Famer. Adrian Peterson, he was the best running back in football for a good amount of years. He's still productive. He has longevity. He has everything that you ask for a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Frank Gore is going to be the guy who gets in the Hall of Fame in a long time from now. And he's going to be the guy that, like, again, we're going to remember, but a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I don't even know who this guy is, possibly, because it's going to be so long for him to get in the Hall of Fame. But I think he's going to get in. And Le'Veon Bell, I'm going to say no, just because he didn't do it long enough. And, I don't have him, the Antonio Brown thing we kind of just talked about. I don't think it's similar. I think it's a whole different ball game. And when he did come back and go back to the Jets, he wasn't productive. He went back to the Chiefs. I don't think he did nearly enough. And I don't think he's going to have – he might not be on a team ever again. But if he is, I don't think he's going to be productive enough for us to make a case for him to be in the Hall of Fame anytime soon.
Adrian Peterson, yes, Hall of Famer. Straight up a Hall of Famer.
First ballot.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I agree.
Even with his controversial stuff throughout his career, yes, I think he is. Le'Veon Bell, hell to the no. Get that on out of here, Tony. Don't even bring up Le'Veon Bell. Okay, and you want him stats, I'll bring up – did he score 40 touchdowns? Yes. But he had 6,453 yards. 6,000.
And what did he do as a receiver?
3,259.
Okay. Yeah, it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
He ain't Terrell Davis.
No, he's not.
I don't even think Terrell Davis should be in the Hall of Fame, but that's another conversation.
I do. Terrell Davis, and that is kind of the reason that I didn't know how good or how great the few great years that Bell had, right? I think that like the years that Terrell Davis had were like historically great. That's the difference between like just having like a really, really good year and having great years. And Terrell Davis had like 3 great seasons in the NFL.
No, Frank Gore, I think he is a Hall of Famer. I think you have to reward longevity at some point, especially with the injury.
Running back.
Especially at the injury that he overcame and in the position that he's playing. You have to reward it. When you're going to put up a lot of yards when you play a lot of seasons, but it's worth it. One guy that you did leave out, Tony, that I'm surprised you didn't mention, and I'm going to say you're probably just a hater anyways, Rashaan Lynch.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Marshawn Lynch. You say Marshawn Lynch?
Yeah.
Hall of Famer. Oh, my goodness. My favorite running back of all time, Marshawn Lynch, will be a Hall of Famer for sure. I'm going to not say nothing about Marshawn Lynch because I can go on forever about that guy. He's the best. He's my favorite. I'm not going to say he's the best, but he's my favorite running back because of everything he does on the field, off the field. On the field, first of all, he had 2 beast quakes. I'm saying he's just running through people. Like he's just running people over. He's like Derrick Henry before Derrick Henry. I'm not going to go too far. But yes, Hall of Famer, Marshawn Lynch.
No, please, passion. That's what we do here. And I love the fact that you love Marshawn Lynch. He is a Hall of Famer. I didn't have him on my list because the kind of show prep that I do, Joe, is I grab a pen, I grab a notebook, and 8 minutes before the show, I just start writing down names. So I did not go to any like Google search of who's on the cusp or who recently retired. But yes, I think we can all agree that Marshawn Lynch is there. Mike is in the comments, and this is a great transition for us to go to quarterback. The 3 names that I wrote down on this list are Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford, and Phillip Rivers. Those are the 3 names that I wrote down on this list, and I want to start with this for Mike. Phillip Rivers is in my Hall of Fame. I don't ask any other questions. I think the guy did it for such a long time at a very high level, and this is another thing that I factor in. Who did you play against? Who knocked you out? And if the people that were knocking you out are all-time greats, are constantly winning Super Bowls with like storied franchises, there's guys that played in the LeBron James era in basketball or the Michael Jordan era that are great at what they do. They just came along at the wrong time. And when you play with Tom Brady almost mirroring his career and Peyton Manning mirroring the time his career, and you're playing in the same conference, it's just shit luck. And you're not like, you can't hold it against him. He put up numbers. He made a bunch of playoffs or whatever. And then they're like, oh, well, he didn't make all pros. He played with the freaking goats of the game. Like, it's unfair. Phillip Rivers is in the Hall of Fame for me.
I agree with that. Phillip Rivers is in my Hall of Fame. And plus, I know Mike's he's listening to this, and I hate to say it, but he was playing for the Chargers, for his career. And I'm just saying, like, the Chargers, that market, that they don't win, they haven't won Super Bowls. I don't mean to be a hater. And Tony, if you're a Chargers fan too, yeah, I hate to say it. You play, and that's just, if he would have went to a team like the Patriots or like these teams that are like bigger markets, bigger like story franchise like you were talking about, I think he might have had a Super Bowl. But he stayed true. He stayed loyal for his whole career, except for his last year went to the Colts. But I still think, of course, this guy, he's a personality as well as a great football player. He's a great guy. Everyone loves him who knows about him. But I think he's in the Hall of Fame. That's
right. Joseph Dangummit, you better say something nice about Phillip Rivers.
Look, somebody came up with a formula, right? It's a formula that it puts 100% of the players' peak, like 90% of their second best year, 95%, 90% of the third year, and so on. So it gives you a starting point. It does bonuses. It does Hall of Fame selections, MVP, awards, Super Bowl titles. It puts it all together, right? And it gives you like a score. And the score for an average Hall of Fame quarterback is 104, right? So 104 is the average. If you guys are following me a little bit, I know this is a little
yeah.
No, I got you.
I was told there'd be no math, but continue.
Phillip Rivers is 97.86. So he's sitting outside of a Hall of Fame quarterback if you go off of that. And I think that's because it's holding the Super Bowls back. So then you got to ask yourself, if he would have had a Super Bowl ring, he would have been up there. Yeah, he's 13th best, but he's better than everybody you just named. He's even that 97 point whatever it is even higher than Eli Manning, and Eli Manning's sitting there with 2 Super Bowl rings.
Yeah. So, he played in a time where one guy went to 9 Super Bowls in his conference. Like, that's unfair.
I'm just saying, I'm going to bring it up again. You're playing for a team, and think about in all sports, these small markets. How many of these small markets really win championships? It took LeBron James going to Cleveland for a second time for Cleveland to win a championship. So I'm just saying, like, how it's really hard for these markets that aren't as big when they were in San Diego to win a championship. I think that's a big deal. When you're talking about Super Bowls, and to Tony's point, you're playing against Tom Brady, you're playing against Peyton Manning, in that era, just like John Stockton in Utah. Utah hasn't won many NBA championships, and you're playing with Michael Jordan. It's going to be tough. You can't really.
He has the 5th most passing yards in NFL history. If you want to go off of that, I think that alone. I mean, the offenses has changed, but I think that alone means something, right?
Yeah,
that should mean something. I go back and forth, and I'm a Raider fan, so I've seen a lot of Phillip Rivers games, and I go back and forth, and sometimes I go back and forth, and I've tried to talk myself and saying that he's not an NFL Hall of Famer, but at the end of the day, I think he is. Dude has 500 passing touchdowns. 500 passing touchdowns. I'm giving him the nod. I'm giving him the Hall of Fame.
Thank you. It's not even okay. Let's go on to ones that are still playing, because we have, and because I want to get to the defensive side of the ball too, and I also want to throw out George Kittle in a minute. But let's go to the other 2 quarterbacks. Matt Ryan and Matt Stafford are still playing, still seem to have some life left. How close, like, what do you need to see from these guys to say, oh, they could get to the Hall of Fame? Like, do they need a Super Bowl ring for you to say to get there? Because they are playing they're going to get a 17th game now. They're playing in a pass-friendly offense for kind of the second half of their careers. Like, what does Stafford need to get to? Does he need to enter? Does he need to go to the 500 touchdown plateau and the end in the top 7 of passing all time?
If I go first, I'm going to tell you that I probably would say Matt Ryan has a better chance than Matthew Stafford at this point. Just in pure passing and everything that we've seen from him, he's been in the Super Bowl. He's a winner. Matthew Stafford, you can say whatever you want about Detroit, but good quarterbacks in any system are supposed to win, right? So I kind of hold that against them. I kind of hold the Detroit record against them. I don't know what we can see, Tony. I don't think these guys are. I don't know. Matt Ryan has more of a case because he's a 65% completion passer. Matthew Stafford's a little bit behind that. I don't know. I'm not going to say that there's anything that I can see him go do in Los Angeles and all of a sudden be like, that's a Hall of Famer, Matthew Stafford, right there. Put a ring on his finger and get him that yellow jacket. I'm not doing it. Matthew Stafford cannot do anything to make himself to the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'll tell you, this is actually good now. I think we have our first little debate here because, Joe, I'm going to say Matthew Stafford, just like I said with Phillip Rivers, he was in Detroit for so long. Now he's finally in a big market on a big team with a top offense. I think the Rams are going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL next year. When you talk about their wide receivers, they have Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. They even have Deshaun Jackson. They have Jefferson Jr. They have a bunch of guys who actually, Deshaun Jackson might be good for 4 games. And then Van Jefferson's going to step right in. They're going to have 3 good receivers next year. Gerald Henderson Jr. is going to be all right. That doesn't matter. It's going to be more pass attempts for Matthew Stafford. So I think Matthew Stafford is going to have a great year this year. He's going to lead the Rams to probably win the division, honestly, and make a strong run. I think he's going to go as far as he can until they meet Tom Brady, and that's probably when they're going to lose. But if he beats Tom Brady, especially, and goes to the Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl in the next 3 years, I think he's a Hall of Famer for sure because he's done everything that you asked for. Like Tony was saying, he's going to need some more touchdowns. He's going to get them. He's going to need some more pass yards. He's going to get them. But if he can be a contender for 3 years in a row with the Rams, which I think he will at least be a Super Bowl contender and be up there and play in these later rounds in the playoffs, I think he's a Hall of Fame. I think he has a higher chance than Matt Ryan does of right now of being in the Hall of Fame just because of what he's going to do in LA.
I agree with Jay on this one. I think that we're about to see a 3 to 4 year stretch from Stafford in Los Angeles where he's going to be supported by a good team, a good coach, and a good complement of weapons. He still has a little bit left in the body and the arm to get through. If the offensive line can hold up, Matthew Stafford is going to finish with a lot of yards, a lot of numbers. Everything's going to look good on paper. I'd be interested to know with your little Hall of Fame formula thing that you put out there, which I am kind of making fun of it, but I'd also like to see it. I do think that I think his score is going to be really low because he's played in Detroit. Like it's going to be lower than Matt Ryan's. It's probably going to be in the 50s or something awful.
It's actually lower than 49.
Yeah, so it's not going to be good. But I do believe that he can make a Hall of Fame case by getting to the Rams, and he needs to make it to a Super Bowl, and he needs to be the reason why they're winning games and winning playoff games. And I think he could run a nice little stretch here over the next 3 to 4 seasons.
And Matt Ryan is at 97.73. He's right below Phillip Rivers on that percentage, Hall of Fame percentage.
Which he's going to have a real nice case too, because if you look at what's happening, Brady's not got forever left. He just doesn't. I'm so tired of the Guerrero. Well, he might play till he's 50. Stop it. If he plays till he's 50, I'm going to lose my freaking mind because I can't handle any more Tom Brady. But Brady will be gone. The Saints are on a rebuild. They don't even know who their quarterback is. So, he does have a shot in that division. Carolina's doing an experiment with Sam Darnold. He's an Arthur Smith experiment away from possibly coming back and being the leader of this division for a good 3-4 year stretch.
Do you want to guess Tom Brady's score on that?
202. No, 374. 374 is my legit guess right now.
There's no way. Hang on. Let me get a guess in. If Matt Ryan is at a 97.
Matt Ryan's 97.
Matt Ryan's at a 97.
An average Hall of Fame quarterback is 104.
Average Hall of Fame quarterback is 104.
Yes.
This number is basically it's incalculable. That's what it should be. Just read like malfunction and NA not available.
And I'll tell you this: he's not number one.
Get the stop it! I don't even. Your list is stupid. Your list is already stupid.
It's all invalid.
It's not my list. I didn't make the damn thing. I'm just telling you, he's not number one on the list. His score is 252.
It's dumb. It's dumb.
The guy above him. You know the guy above him.
Is it Bradshaw because he went 4 for 4 or something?
No, it's Peyton Manning.
Oh my goodness! Stop.
So Peyton Manning's at 257. The third guy on the list was Brett Favre. Fourth guy would be Aaron Rodgers.
Well, Favre should be number 3 on the list. Don't get me started on that. Congratulations, this list is perfect. I love it, right where it is. Let's not. Oh my, it's so dumb.
Hey.
It's so dumb. You can't sucker me in by telling me good news about Favre after I just shit on the list, because Jay, if you don't know this, I will go to the mat for Brett Favre in any argument. But Tom Brady, it's 7 Super Bowls. It's over with. Like you should get 10 points per Super Bowl, whatever it is.
I know why he's low. Is because he said they'd only count like the peak year and then like the other 3 years around it. So it doesn't even get to the 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th Super Bowl to even calculate that. I think it's a problem. You calculate the Super Bowls and he's like at 380.
Yeah.
That's a flaw.
Yeah, Tony. And I didn't make this formula. I just found it while we were on the air, and I thought I would just throw it out there.
Tom Brady beat the system. No one thought that a quarterback would have more than 4 Super Bowls. So they just like made that system not thinking that someone would win more than 4 Super Bowls. Tom Brady just broke the system. Is what it is. That's how good he is.
Tom Brady has played so long and so well. There's an argument from Nick Wright that from First Things First, where he argues that Tom Brady legit had 3 peaks. And when I first heard him presenting the argument, I was like, "This is gonna be the dumbest thing I've ever heard." And then he shows that Tom Brady has had 3 different peak Hall of Fame careers. He separates them out, and it's like, oh shit, he's really right. Like what the guy's been able to do, he should be number 1. George Kittle, anybody? And it was a rough transition.
No.
Can he make the Hall of Fame? No.
I think he can make the Hall of Fame. I don't think right now, obviously. I think what he needs to do. This goes with just this year as well. Is you're always worried about injuries with George Kittle. Like you see George Kittle and you're like, he's a top 2 tight end, if not a top 3 behind Darren Waller. And you just think that if he can stay healthy, he could probably surpass Travis Kelce as the best tight end in football. But he's just constantly getting hurt and missing games. If he can play the next 7 years, 6 years, stay healthy. Though. How is he is he 27?
No, I think he's in his 30s, right? Isn't he 30 or 31? He's a little.
All right, let's just.
He's a little long in the tooth. I don't think he's got 6 or 7 years. He's not going to go Antonio Gates.
You're right.
Gates is a Hall of Famer.
No, he is 27.
He's 27?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So he can play till 33, and if he plays six years that are really good, and they because the Niners are a good team. That's the best division in football, by the way. Niners, Seahawks, Rams, and the Cardinals. If he could stay competitive, stay healthy, and have 6 good years, I think he makes the Hall of Fame. But it's tough. It's tough to say he'll do that.
Yeah, there's no argument. I didn't know he was 27. I thought he was in his 30s. Maybe, yeah, I could see a scenario if he could stay healthy. I could see a scenario in which, and he's also just he's beloved by everybody. The National Tight End Day.
They have that score for wide receivers or for tight ends as well, Tony.
Okay, well, if you want to continue on that, when you get that
I'm just
number,
saying, average tight end is a 97.57 is what they're saying. He's the 64th best tight end in history with a 20.68.
Okay, so he's got some work to do. He's got some work to do.
Let me see. So Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, Shannon Sharp, Dave Casper, and Jason Witten are their top 5 tight ends.
Okay. I don't know Dave Casper, but I'm good. I'm good with that list.
But they have Gronk at number 7, so an active player, Gronk, is basically they're saying is close enough to be a Hall of Famer.
Oh, is he? Oh, thanks for your list.
It's probably the worst, best analysis.
Is Rob Gronkowski good enough to be a Hall of Famer?
If you have to check a list to ask if Rob Gronkowski to be a Hall of Famer,
I'm just saying he's there on the score. You guys can get all pissed off that you want. I didn't make the fucking list.
No, we're not mad
at you, Joe. We're mad at the guy who made this list.
I'm just going off with some lists that I found. And if you want to blame somebody, I can give you the website, but I'm not going to go out.
No, we don't need to. I'm sure it's a more of a better formula.
Let's just say somebody took this formula and they're probably writing a bunch of pieces about it or making a bunch of TikToks about it and saying how correct it is.
I'll just say this. It's a form. I don't have any formulas. My formula is my personal bias. That's my formula for it. So this guy created something to help us settle arguments. I just happen to think that Rob Gronkowski being 7th on the list behind Dave Casper or whatever. I just look at what the guys. How do you not factor in what the guy's done at Super Bowls? It's my Julian Edelman argument. I didn't even put Julian Edelman on my list because I don't like arguing for Julian Edelman because to me, I've just seen the guy do it so much in the postseason that I'm like, he's a Hall of Famer to me. But most people told me I was an idiot when I said that when he retired.
Where does Sterling Sharp? I got rid of that list. I'll have to look again.
Oh wow.
But yeah. It's what you see and what you know about football, and then you look at the stats to make sure that they make sense, and that's basically it. I think it has to be a little bit of both. You can't just be just off stats.
And the problem with Sterling Sharp is, one, he had to play most of his career with Don Majkowski, and then he gets injured. So, but the highlight, the peak of his career was with the Magic Man, Don Majkowski. That's not fair. I want to go to the defensive side of the ball. I'll throw some names out. I don't want to go towards the Seahawks that I have on the list first. But Patrick Peterson, is he in everybody's Hall of Fame?
He's in my Hall of Fame.
He's in my Hall of Fame. Cornerback.
Yeah, I'd give it to him.
I think he was the best at one point. The cornerbacks, from the Vikings, Xavier Rhodes was pretty. No? Okay.
I'm not gonna have him in the Hall of Fame right now.
Jalen Ramsey. Is there a scenario in which that you'll be like, yeah, this guy's on his way to being a Hall of Famer? Like, could you see him getting into the Hall of Fame?
I think he'll get in the Hall of Fame. Again, he's gonna have some good years coming up ahead of him. He's already had some good years behind him. I think he's gonna get in the Hall of Fame.
I think, this has to go back to what Juan was saying. When you're one of the best at your position for a certain amount of time, and Jalen Ramsey he's done that. I think he's done it one time in Jacksonville, and I think he's done it one time in L.A. I think he will be a Hall of Famer.
Yep. I mean, I put it this way: when I'm playing Madden football and I get a pick, I'm yelling out Jalen, or Dion. I'm not yelling out like whoever else, like Xavier Rhodes. I've never, what I'm saying? And wasn't he the guy that got? No, that wasn't him. But still, I'm not, what I'm saying? Jalen Ramsey's like those once in a big span. Jalen Ramsey, Richard Sherman, Deion Sanders. I think he's in that conversation, in my opinion. I think he's going to further prove himself later on.
No, and anyway, I'm starting to feel like same old doesn't like. Okay, hang on. I messed up my own damn joke. Anyways, I was gonna do a nobody does a Rhodes close joke, but we'll move on to your Seahawks, Bobby Wagner and Richard Sherman.
I think they're both Hall of Fame. I think Richard Sherman should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That guy, he's my favorite defensive player of all time. Like, there's no defensive player I like more than Richard Sherman. So it might be personal bias, but he's my first ballot Hall of Famer. He got the interceptions when they mattered. He was always there. No one threw to his side of the field for a long time. He had the mouth and he had the play to back it up. I think the best interview of all time, LOB, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you tell Kaepernick when you throw to a sorry receiver like capture, that's what you're going to get? You know what I'm saying? Like, he has the best quotes. You know what I'm saying? He has the best on-field. The best memory for me is when Colin Kaepernick threw it to the back end. I don't know why he threw this ball, but he threw it to Richard Sherman's side, and Richard Sherman tipped it up. And I think it was it might have been KJ Wright or Malcolm Smith who got the actual pick. But that was one of the best memories for me in football of all time. And it was a Richard Sherman play. Now, Bobby Wagner, I think Bobby Wagner's been the best middle linebacker in football for a long enough time for him to be a Hall of Famer as well, and probably a first ballot Hall of Famer as well.
Richard Sherman. My favorite thing about Richard Sherman is when they played the Packers one time, and Aaron Rodgers threw 0 passes to his side of the field, and they asked him about it afterwards, and I was like, "Well, Favre wouldn't have been scared." He skirted around it like that wasn't part of the game plan or whatever. It's like, well, you should have at least tested him once, because a real champion would have done that. Any thoughts on Wagner, Sherman, Joe?
Well, yeah, Sherman, you already made the case. He was going up against sorry wide receivers like Crabtree his whole career. So why would we put him in the Hall of Fame? No, I think Richard Sherman will get there. I don't know if he's first ballot. That whole defense, the Legion of Boom defense, deserves their credit. Richard Sherman, I think we'll have to wait. Bobby Wagner, I think, is on pace to be the guy, to be first ballot. I like what he's doing. Everything he's done in his career, he's still doing it. So yeah, I'll go Bobby Wagner first ballot, but I won't go Richard Sherman. I can't buy that one. I would think it's going to take a couple of years.
I'm going to do you one better, Joe. I'm going to say Richard Sherman first ballot. Bobby Wagner has a chance to be first ballot. And I'm actually going to go Cam Chancellor. I think Cam Chancellor could go first ballot as well. I'm talking about the LOB defense.
I don't.
I'm gonna go that far. I could see that happen. I'm not gonna go. I don't think Earl Thomas is gonna go first ballot for sure. I don't even know Hall of Fame. Neither Jeremy Lane. I love Jeremy Lane. I don't think he's gonna go. Byron Max's not gonna go. But Richard Sherman, I think is the first ballot Hall of Fame, and I could see Cam Chancellor. I think he's gonna go to the Hall of Fame for sure. But if he goes first ballot, it won't be surprising. I won't be like shocked.
I think
I won't bet, but
I think Cam Chancellor gets in, but not.
I think
maybe I'm getting too hyped now.
I want to see what happens with Patrick Willis. We'll see what happens with Patrick Willis to see if Bobby Wagner is actually going to get the first ballot.
Yeah, I forgot about Patrick Willis. He was a beast. All right, we just hit an hour and a half mark here. I think that is a very extensive.
You guys want to go back to the ratings?
You want to go back for what?
Close out the defensive ratings.
Oh,
Richard Sherman should be number one.
I thought we were waiting on a Sterling Sharp one, but it never came. So I'm good with moving on. Tomorrow we have Mike's Film Room popping up in here somewhere. We have on WarzoneSportsNetwork.com all sorts of great blogs. Joe shares a very personal, touching thing, what it's like to be a Raiders fan, and the first moment that he realized that he was like, oh, I'm going to choose to be miserable every September to February, every year for the rest of my life. Jay, thank you for joining us. Your Seahawks fandom was on full display, and we appreciate you sharing that with us.
And actually, before I go, my last statement is going to be prayers to Richard Sherman because he's going through some mental illness things right now, too. I don't know if you guys heard about what's going on with him, but I hope he's doing okay, and I'm going to sign off. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Joe. I hope you all are well, and I'll see y'all soon. Thank you.
Sounds good. Peace, brother.
Mike, no Cam.
No. Yeah, we can't go that route right now. All right, I got completely messed up where I was at. Signing off the show. Joe, you got this music ready to go for us?
Yeah, but I want to hear something good come out of your mouth before I do it.
I don't have.
Can you just give us one good joke this whole weekend?
One good joke.